The mining colony of Kepler 442b stretched across the red wasteland like a metal scar on an alien world. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished her shift in the processing plant. Her hands were stained with the purple residue of quantum crystals, and her back ached from 12 hours of manual labor. Nobody here knew that these same hands had once piloted the most advanced warship in human history. She walked through the cramped corridors of the worker dormitories, keeping her head down as always. The other miners chatted about their families back on Earth, their dreams of saving enough credits to return home, or complaints about the harsh working conditions. Sarah listened but never joined in. She had learned long ago that silence was her best protection. "Hey, Chen," called out Marcus, a bulky man who worked the heavy machinery. "You coming to the cantina tonight? Torres is buying drinks for everyone." Sarah shook her head without looking up. Too tired. "Maybe next time." Marcus shrugged and continued down the hallway with his friends. Sarah had been giving the same excuse for 3 years. The truth was, she couldn't risk getting drunk and saying something she shouldn't. Alcohol had a way of loosening tongues, and her tongue held secrets that could start another war. In her small quarters, Sarah sat on her narrow bed and stared at the blank metal wall. She had decorated nothing, owned nothing beyond the basic necessities. This wasn't a home. It was just another hiding place. She had lived in 17 different hiding places over the past 8 years, always moving when someone got too curious or when her nightmares became too loud. The nightmares came every night without fail. She would see the Battle of Titan again, hear the screams over the comm channels as entire ships were torn apart. She would feel the weight of command as she made the decision that saved humanity, but cost her everything else. In her dreams, the faces of the dead would ask her why she abandoned them, why she ran instead of staying to be honored as the hero everyone said she was. A soft chime from her personal communicator interrupted her thoughts. Sarah frowned. Nobody ever contacted her except for work assignments. She activated the device and saw a message from the colony administrator. "Chen, report to my office immediately. Urgent matter." Sarah's blood ran cold. Had someone discovered who she was? She had been so careful, had paid good money for false identification documents, had chosen this remote colony specifically because it was far from the major trade routes. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the administrative section, her mind racing through escape plans. The administrator's office was larger than most living quarters on the colony, with a real window that looked out over the mining fields. Administrator Kowalski was a thin, nervous man who usually avoided direct contact with the workers. Today he looked even more anxious than usual. "Sit down, Chen," he said without looking at her. "We have a problem." Sarah remained standing, ready to run if necessary. "What kind of problem?" Kowalski activated his desk display, showing news feeds from across human space. The headlines made Sarah's heart skip a beat. "Alien fleet detected at edge of solar system. Unknown ships refuse all communication attempts. Military mobilization begins." "These ships appeared 3 days ago," Kowalski explained. "They're not responding to any attempts at communication, and their technology appears to be far advanced beyond anything we've seen before. The government is calling up all military personnel, active and retired." Sarah fought to keep her expression neutral.
"What does that have to do with me?"
"I'm just a miner." Kowalski finally looked at her directly, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her stomach drop. "Cut the act, Commander Sarah Chen, hero of Titan, vanquisher of the Centauri Rebellion. Did you really think you could hide forever?" The room seemed to spin around Sarah. 8 years of careful planning of staying invisible had just crumbled in an instant. She considered denying it, but the look in Kowalski's eyes told her it would be pointless. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About 6 months. A routine background check turned up some inconsistencies in your documentation. It took us a while to figure out who you really were. We've been keeping it quiet, but now..." He gestured at the news feeds. "Now humanity needs its greatest military commander." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Greatest military commander? Is that what they're calling me now? I seem to remember being called a lot of other things when I left." "The court-martial was overturned," Kowalski said. "Your actions at Titan were deemed necessary for human survival. You're not a war criminal, Chen. You're a hero. Tell that to the families of the soldiers I left behind." Sarah turned toward the door. "Find someone else. I'm done fighting." "There is no one else," Kowalski said urgently. "You're the only human who has ever faced alien military technology and won." These new ships, they're using similar energy signatures to what the Centauri had. Sarah paused with her hand on the door control. The Centauri had been humanity's first contact with hostile alien life, and the war had nearly destroyed human civilization. She had ended that war through tactics so ruthless that half of humanity had branded her a monster. The other half had called her a savior. The transport leaves in 6 hours, Kowalski continued. Direct route to Earth Command. They're giving you a full pardon and reinstating your rank. You'll have complete authority over the defense fleet. And if I refuse, then humanity probably dies and you get to live with that for however long our species survives. Sarah closed her eyes and saw the faces from her nightmares. Then she imagined billions more faces joining them if she walked away now. She had run from her responsibilities once before, and the guilt had been eating her alive ever since. Maybe this was her chance for redemption, or maybe it was just another path to damnation. I need an hour to think, she said finally. You have 30 minutes. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Sarah nodded and left the office. She walked through the colony corridors one last time, looking at the faces of the miners and their families. These people had no idea that their quiet, antisocial co-worker might be the only thing standing between them and extinction. In her quarters, Sarah opened the small storage compartment she had never touched in 3 years. Inside was a sealed case containing her old military uniform, her service decorations, and a holographic letter from her sister that she had never been able to watch. She picked up the letter projector with trembling hands. Her sister's image appeared, smiling and proud. Sarah, if you're watching this, it means you're finally ready to come home. I know you blame yourself for what happened, but we need you. Earth needs you. Don't let the past destroy the future. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes and began putting on her uniform. The fabric felt strange after so many years, but it still fit perfectly. She pinned her medals to her chest with steady hands, each one representing a battle fought and won in humanity's darkest hour. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer saw Sarah Chen the miner. She saw Commander Sarah Chen, the woman who had saved humanity once before and would have to do it again. The transport ship trembled as it dropped out of hyperspace near Earth. Sarah pressed her face to the small porthole and watched her homeworld grow larger. 8 years ago, she had left in disgrace, branded a war criminal by half the population. Now she was returning as humanity's last hope against an unknown enemy. The journey from Kepler 442b had taken 18 hours, giving Sarah plenty of time to review the intelligence reports about the alien fleet. The ships were massive, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations. Their hull design was unlike anything in human records, with smooth curves and energy patterns that seemed almost organic. Most disturbing of all, they had positioned themselves in a perfect sphere around the solar system, cutting off all escape routes. Commander Chen, we're receiving docking clearance for Luna Command, announced the pilot. Admiral Harrison is waiting for you personally. Sarah nodded but didn't reply. Admiral Harrison had been her second in command during the Centauri War. He had stood by her during the court-martial, even when it cost him his own promotion. She wondered if he would still consider her a friend or if 8 years of running had burned that bridge too. Luna Command was a sprawling military complex built into the moon's surface. As Sarah walked through the corridors, she noticed how much had changed. The walls displayed holographic memorials to fallen soldiers, many of whom had died in battles she had commanded. Young officers stopped and stared as she passed, recognizing her face from history books. My God, it really is her, she heard one whisper to another. The ghost of Titan herself. Sarah had earned that nickname after the Battle of Titan, where she had used the moon's gravity well to slingshot a damaged fleet around Saturn and strike the Centauri forces from behind. The maneuver had been brilliant, desperate, and had required her to abandon 3 crippled ships to their fate. Those ships had contained 15,000 human soldiers. Admiral Harrison's office was exactly as Sarah remembered it, cluttered with tactical displays, empty coffee cups, and stacks of reports. The man himself had aged considerably, his once black hair now completely gray, but his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence that had made him invaluable during the war. Sarah. He stood and extended his hand. Thank you for coming. She shook his hand firmly. I didn't have much choice, James. Though I suppose I could have kept running. You could have. But you didn't. That tells me the woman I served with is still in there somewhere. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. We need to bring you up to speed quickly. The situation has deteriorated since you left Kepler. Harrison activated his wall display, showing the positions of the alien ships around the solar system. They've moved closer to Earth in the past day. Our best analysts estimate they'll be in weapons range within 72 hours. We've tried every form of communication we can think of, but they're not responding. What about our fleet strength? Sarah asked, studying the tactical display. 47 capital ships, 200 destroyers, and about 600 smaller vessels. It sounds impressive, but these alien ships are each the size of Manhattan. Our weapons barely scratched their hulls during the probe attacks. Sarah frowned. Probe attacks? You engaged them already? Harrison looked uncomfortable. Admiral Peterson ordered a reconnaissance in force yesterday. We sent 3 destroyers to test their defenses. The alien ships didn't fire back, but they generated some kind of energy field that completely drained our ship's power systems. The crews are alive, but the vessels are dead in space. Peterson's still making tactical decisions. Sarah couldn't hide her disgust. That man couldn't strategize his way out of a paper bag during the Centauri War. He's the current fleet commander, Harrison said diplomatically, though the Defense Council has agreed to give you operational authority. Peterson isn't happy about it. Sarah stood and walked to the tactical display, studying the alien formation. This isn't random positioning. Look at the spacing between their ships. It's a containment pattern designed to prevent anything from leaving the system. They're not here to conquer us, James. They're here to judge us. Judge us for what? For what we did to the Centauri. Sarah traced the alien ship's positions with her finger. Think about it. We encountered our first alien species, and within 6 months we had wiped them out completely. These new ships use similar energy signatures to Centauri technology. They might be related, or they might just be another species that learned what happened here. Harrison was quiet for a moment. So you think they're here for revenge? Or to make sure we can't do to others what we did to the Centauri? Either way, we're facing a species that has had 8 years to study our tactics and prepare countermeasures. They know exactly how we fight. A young officer burst into the room without knocking. Admiral Harrison, sir. The alien ships are moving. They've accelerated their approach vector. Estimated time to Earth orbit is now 18 hours. Harrison turned to Sarah. Looks like we're out of time for planning. The Defense Council wants to meet with you immediately. The Defense Council chamber was packed with military leaders, government officials, and scientists. Sarah recognized many faces from her past, though most now bore the marks of age and stress. The room fell silent as she entered, all eyes fixed on the woman who had become a legend in her absence. Defense Minister Walsh called the meeting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we face an unprecedented threat to human survival. Commander Chen has graciously agreed to take operational command of our defense forces. With respect, Minister Walsh, interrupted Admiral Peterson, I question the wisdom of placing our fate in the hands of someone who abandoned her post and has spent 8 years hiding from responsibility. Sarah had expected this challenge. Peterson had always resented her rapid promotion during the Centauri War, and her subsequent disgrace had given him the position he felt he deserved. She stood calmly and faced the assembled council. Admiral Peterson is correct, she said. I did abandon my post, and I did spend 8 years running from my responsibilities. I'm not proud of that. But I'm here now because humanity needs someone who understands how to fight an enemy with superior technology. Your last great victory involved sacrificing 15,000 soldiers, Peterson continued. How many more will you sacrifice this time? The room erupted in angry voices, some defending Sarah and others questioning her fitness for command. Sarah waited for the noise to die down before responding. Admiral Peterson, during the Centauri War, I made decisions that haunted me every day since. I chose to save 6 million people on Earth by sacrificing 15,000 soldiers on 3 crippled ships. It was the hardest decision of my life, and I would give anything to have found another way. But I didn't run from that responsibility because I was a coward. I ran because I was afraid I might have to make that choice again. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each council member. Now I'm back because that choice is here again. We can sit in this room and debate my past mistakes while an alien fleet reduces our cities to ash. Or we can use the time we have left to save as many lives as possible. The choice is yours. Minister Walsh called for a vote. When it was finished, Sarah had been confirmed as Supreme Fleet Commander by a margin of 1 vote. Peterson's face was red with anger as he stormed out of the chamber. Congratulations, Commander, Walsh said. You now have complete authority over humanity's military forces. What are your orders? Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. She had 18 hours to prepare for a battle that would determine whether humanity survived as a species or joined the Centauri in extinction. Recall all ships to Earth orbit, she ordered. Full combat readiness. And someone get me detailed scans of those alien vessels. If we're going to die, we're going to make them remember they were in a fight. Sarah stood in the command center aboard the flagship UES Defiance, watching hundreds of ships take their positions around Earth. The massive dreadnoughts formed the outer defensive ring, their weapons trained on the approaching alien fleet. Smaller vessels filled the gaps, creating overlapping fields of fire that should have been impenetrable. Should have been. Sarah knew better than most how quickly battle plans fell apart when the enemy refused to follow them. Fleet status report, she called out to her staff. All ships in position, Commander, replied Captain Torres, her new chief of staff. Weapons powered, shields at maximum. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the tactical display showing the alien fleet. 12 hours had passed since she took command, and the enemy ships had maintained their steady approach without any deviation. Their formation was perfect, their spacing precise, and they showed no signs of slowing down. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, announced the communications officer. It's not coming from the alien ships. Source appears to be everywhere at once. Put it through. The main display flickered and changed to show a figure that made Sarah's blood run cold. It was humanoid but clearly alien, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Most disturbing of all, it bore a striking resemblance to the Centauri beings humanity had fought 8 years ago. People of Earth, the alien spoke in perfect English, its voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. I am High Arbiter Zethkara of the Centauri Remnant. We have come to deliver judgment upon your species for the genocide you committed against our people. Murmurs of shock rippled through the command center. The Centauri were supposed to be extinct. Sarah had made sure of that herself. Your military leader, the one you call the Ghost of Titan, believed she had destroyed us completely. Zethkara continued. She was nearly correct. Of the billions who lived in the Centauri systems, only a few thousand survived your final assault. We have spent these years rebuilding, growing stronger, and preparing for this moment. Sarah stepped forward to address the alien directly. I'm here, Zethkara. If you want justice for what happened during the war, then take it out on me. Don't punish an entire species for my decisions. The alien's large eyes seemed to focus directly on her. Despite the fact that this was clearly a one-way transmission, Sarah Chen, the architect of our destruction, your species honors you as a hero, but we remember you differently. You showed no mercy, accepted no surrender, and pursued us to the very edge of extinction. Your people started that war, Sarah replied, her voice steady. You attacked our colonies without provocation. I did what was necessary to protect humanity. Necessary? Zethkara's expression was unreadable, an interesting word choice. We shall see if your species finds your methods as acceptable when they are used against you. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. If the Centauri had survived and rebuilt, then they had had 8 years to study human tactics and develop countermeasures. Worse, they had clearly advanced their technology far beyond what humanity possessed. Commander, Captain Torres said quietly, the alien fleet has accelerated again. They'll be in weapons range in 4 hours. Sarah turned to her tactical officer. Analysis of their ships? Still incomplete, ma'am. Our sensors are having difficulty penetrating their hull materials. What we can tell is that each ship appears to be primarily organic in construction, almost like living tissue. They're generating massive energy readings far beyond anything in our database. Organic construction, Sarah mused. That explains how they survived our attacks on their homeworld. We targeted their industrial infrastructure, but if their ships can literally grow and heal themselves... She was interrupted by an urgent alert from the sensor station. Commander, one of the alien ships has broken formation. It's heading directly for the outer defensive perimeter. Sarah watched the tactical display as a single alien vessel, still massive beyond human scale, approached the ring of dreadnoughts. It moved with fluid grace, unlike the mechanical precision of human ships. As it came within weapons range, it simply stopped and waited. It's not attacking, observed Captain Torres. What are they doing? Sarah had a horrible suspicion. All ships, power down weapons immediately. Commander? Torres looked confused. Why would we? Do it now. That's an order. The weapons officer hesitated for a moment, then began powering down the fleet's armaments. As soon as the energy readings from human weapons dropped to 0, the alien ship began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. Energy surge detected from the alien vessel, reported the sensor operator. It's beautiful. The alien ship had transformed into something that looked more like a work of art than a weapon of war. Streams of energy flowed across its hull in patterns that seemed almost musical, and the ship itself appeared to be singing at frequencies just below human hearing. Then it attacked. The energy discharge was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Instead of traditional weapons, the alien ship released what could only be described as pure pain given physical form. The beam struck the nearest human dreadnought, and immediately the ship's crew began screaming over the comm channels. Hull intact, no physical damage, reported the tactical officer in confusion. But the crew, they're all reporting extreme agony, psychological trauma beyond description. Sarah watched in horror as the mighty dreadnought UES Thunderbolt, with its crew of 8,000, simply went silent. The ship was undamaged, but no one was responding to communications. The alien vessel had somehow weaponized suffering itself. All ships, emergency jump to backup positions, Sarah ordered. Pattern Delta 7. Move now. The human fleet scattered according to the predetermined plan, but the alien ship didn't pursue. It simply returned to the main formation, which had continued its steady approach toward Earth. Casualty report from the Thunderbolt, announced the communications officer. All crew members are alive but completely catatonic. Medical teams report symptoms consistent with severe psychological trauma, but no physical injuries. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to think. The Centauri had developed a weapon that could destroy minds instead of bodies. It was elegant, terrifying, and perfectly suited for a species that wanted their enemies to suffer rather than simply die. Commander, incoming transmission from Admiral Peterson, announced the communications officer. Sarah grimaced but accepted the call. Peterson's face appeared on the screen, red with fury and accusation. 8 years, he snarled. 8 years you've been hiding while the rest of us tried to rebuild from your mistakes. Now you're back for 12 hours and you've already lost a dreadnought. The crew is alive, Admiral, Sarah replied calmly. That ship would have been completely destroyed if we had fought back conventionally. Alive? Those people are vegetables. And for what? So you could run away again? Is that your plan, Chen? Keep retreating until there's nowhere left to go. Sarah was about to reply when another alarm sounded. The main alien fleet had reached Earth's orbital space and was taking up positions around the planet. They weren't attacking yet, but the message was clear. Earth was now surrounded and helpless. Admiral Peterson, Sarah said with forced calm, I need you to evacuate the civilian populations from the major cities. Use every transport you can find. We may only have hours before they begin their assault. And what will you be doing while innocent people die because of your past mistakes? Sarah looked at the tactical display, showing the alien fleet's perfect positioning around her homeworld. The Centauri had learned from their defeat. This time, they held all the advantages. I'm going to do what I should have done 8 years ago, she said. I'm going to try talking to them. Peterson's expression shifted from anger to shock. Talking? These aliens just demonstrated a weapon that can destroy minds. They're here for revenge. Then maybe it's time I gave them what they're really looking for. Sarah cut the connection and turned to her communications officer. Send a message to the Centauri fleet. Tell them I'm willing to surrender myself in exchange for Earth's safety. The command center fell silent. Captain Torres stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. Commander, you can't seriously be considering... I won't let billions of people suffer for decisions I made 8 years ago, Sarah interrupted. If my surrender saves Earth, then it's a price worth paying. But even as she spoke the words, Sarah was already formulating another plan. The Centauri wanted justice, but they also wanted humanity to understand what it felt like to lose everything. She might be able to use that desire for symmetry against them. If she was very clever and very lucky, she might even survive what came next. The shuttle bay of the Centauri flagship was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, covered in what looked like veins carrying luminescent fluid. The air itself felt different, thicker somehow, and filled with harmonic vibrations that made her teeth ache. Sarah walked forward with steady steps, flanked by 2 Centauri guards whose weapons appeared to be grown rather than manufactured. She had come alone, as requested, wearing only her dress uniform and carrying no weapons. Behind her, through the energy barrier that sealed the shuttle bay, her own ship waited in the void between the alien vessels. High Arbiter Zeth Kara stood waiting for her at the center of the bay. Up close, the Centauri leader was even more imposing than the transmission had shown. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that shifted between pale blue and silver depending on the light. Most unsettling were the eyes, completely black and deep enough to seem like windows into empty space. "Sarah Chen," Zeth Kara spoke, and Sarah realized the alien's mouth didn't move when it talked. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The ghost of Titan comes to face judgment at last." "I've come to offer myself in exchange for Earth's safety," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "Whatever you want to do to me, I accept. But leave the innocent people out of this." Zeth Kara made a sound that might have been laughter, though it resonated in frequencies that made Sarah's bones vibrate. "Innocent? Your species knows nothing of innocence, but you misunderstand why we have brought you here." The alien gestured, and the walls around them shifted, becoming transparent to reveal the interior of the massive ship. Sarah gasped, despite herself. The vessel wasn't just organic in construction, it was actually alive. Corridors pulsed like arteries, and she could see thousands of Centauri moving through passages that resembled the inside of some vast creature. "Behold what you forced us to become," Zeth Kara said. "When you destroyed our worlds, you left us with nothing but our dead. So we learned to build from death itself. Every ship in our fleet is crafted from the remains of those you killed. They live again through biotechnology your species cannot comprehend." Sarah felt sick but forced herself to look. The implications were staggering. The Centauri hadn't just survived her campaign of extermination. They had turned their dead into weapons against humanity. "This ship that carries us," Zeth Kara continued, "was grown from the corpses of my own family. My mate, my offspring, my genetic line, all transformed into living vessels for our return. Do you understand what that means, Ghost of Titan?" "It means you found a way to make the dead serve the living," Sarah said quietly. "It's horrifying, but also brilliant. You've turned our greatest weapon against you into your greatest strength. More than that, we have learned to harness the essence of suffering itself. That weapon you witnessed earlier, the one that destroyed the minds of your warriors, feeds on the pain we have endured. Every death you caused, every life you extinguished, has been transformed into a tool for your species' judgment." Sarah nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand the Centauri's true purpose here. "You don't just want revenge. You want us to feel what you felt. Finally, wisdom from the architect of genocide." Zeth Kara moved closer, and Sarah could see her own reflection in those black eyes. "We could destroy your fleet in moments. We could reduce your cities to ash and salt your fields so nothing grows again for 1,000 years. But that would be too quick, too clean. So what do you want?" "We want your species to experience the slow death of hope that we endured. We want you to watch helplessly as everything you care about withers away. We want humanity to beg for mercy, as we did, only to receive the same compassion you showed us." The alien paused, and the ship around them seemed to pulse with anticipation. "But we are not without honor. We offer you a choice that we were never given." Sarah waited, knowing that whatever came next would determine the fate of her entire species. "Single combat," Zeth Kara announced. "Champion against champion. If your warrior defeats ours, we will withdraw and leave your species in peace. If our champion wins, Earth dies slowly, and the survivors will serve us as we rebuild our empire among the stars. And you'll honor this agreement, no matter what happens?" "We swear by the bones of our ancestors that rest in the walls of this ship. The combat will be fair, witnessed by both our peoples. Choose your champion carefully, Ghost of Titan. Choose well, for you will not get a second chance." Sarah considered her options. Any human fighter would be hopelessly outmatched against Centauri biotechnology and psychic weapons. Unless... She thought about the alien's words, the emphasis on honor and fairness. There might be a loophole she could exploit. I accept your terms, Sarah said. But I have conditions of my own. Zethkara's expression was unreadable. You are hardly in a position to make demands. I'm in a position to make this interesting, Sarah countered. You want humanity to understand what you went through. But your victory will be meaningless if we don't fight back with everything we have. Let me choose the rules of engagement, and I'll give you a battle worthy of your dead. The alien was silent for a long moment, consulting with something or someone Sarah couldn't see. Finally, Zethkara nodded. Speak your conditions. Hand-to-hand combat only. No energy weapons, no biotechnology, no psychic abilities. Just physical strength, skill, and determination. The way your ancestors fought before they developed their advanced technologies. You seek to negate our advantages. I seek to make this a true test of worthiness, Sarah replied. Your people value honor above all else, correct? Then prove your superiority without relying on tools. Show us that the Centauri are better than humanity at the most basic level of combat. Zethkara considered this for another long moment. Your proposal has merit. It would indeed be more satisfying to defeat you with strength alone. Very well. Hand-to-hand combat, no weapons, no technology beyond what nature provides. Who do you choose as your champion? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment everything hinged on. I choose myself. The alien's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Something that might have been surprise flashed across Zethkara's features. You, the architect of our destruction, wishes to face our greatest warrior personally? I made the decisions that led to this moment, Sarah said firmly. I destroyed your people, caused your suffering, and forced you to become what you are now. If anyone should face the consequences, it should be me. This is unexpected, Zethkara admitted. We had prepared our champion to face your strongest warrior, perhaps one of your enhanced soldiers or combat specialists. You are a fleet commander, a strategist. You have not been trained for personal combat. Then your victory should be that much sweeter, Sarah pointed out. Unless you're afraid that defeating a mere strategist won't prove your superiority. She had hit the right note. Centauri pride was legendary, and the challenge in her words was unmistakable. Zethkara's posture straightened, and the harmonic vibrations around them intensified. Very well, Ghost of Titan. You will face Warrior Prime Kethmor, greatest of our surviving champions. The combat will take place in 1 hour, broadcast to both our fleets so all may witness. Prepare yourself for death. As the guards escorted Sarah to a holding area, she tried not to think about what she was really doing. She wasn't a fighter, had never been trained for hand-to-hand combat beyond basic military requirements. Kethmor was undoubtedly a professional warrior with decades of experience and alien advantages she couldn't even imagine. But Sarah did have one advantage the Centauri might not expect. She had absolutely nothing left to lose. 8 years of running 8 years of guilt and nightmares had brought her to this moment. Whether she won or lost, at least the running would finally be over. She just hoped her sacrifice would mean something. The combat arena was a spherical chamber at the heart of the Centauri flagship, its walls lined with what Sarah now recognized as organic viewing platforms, where hundreds of aliens watched with those unsettling black eyes. The floor beneath her feet felt warm and slightly yielding, like standing on living tissue. Sarah stood in the center of the arena, wearing simple combat fatigues that the Centauri had provided. They had removed her uniform, her insignia, everything that marked her as a commander. Here she was just another human about to die for her species' sins. Across from her, Warrior Prime Kethmor waited with the patience of a predator. The Centauri champion was even larger than Zethkara, standing nearly 9 feet tall with a physique that suggested both incredible strength and fluid grace. The alien's skin was darker than the others, almost purple, and covered with what looked like natural armor plates. People of both species, Zethkara's voice resonated throughout the chamber. Witness this combat that will determine the fate of Earth and the justice owed to the Centauri dead. Let it be known that victory here will be achieved through strength, skill, and will alone. Sarah focused on her breathing, trying to calm her racing heart. She had spent the past hour studying her opponent through the chamber's viewing portals. looking for weaknesses or patterns she could exploit. Kethmore moved like liquid metal, every motion economical and purposeful. The alien was clearly a master of multiple combat disciplines. Champion of humanity, Kethmore spoke for the first time, its voice deeper and more resonant than Zethkara's. I offer you the honor of striking first. Let it not be said that we showed no mercy. Sarah almost smiled at that. The alien was so confident in its superiority that it was giving her a free shot. She decided to accept the offer, not because she thought it would help, but because it might teach her something about her opponent's defensive capabilities. She lunged forward without warning, aiming a quick jab at what she hoped was a vulnerable spot just below the alien's torso armor. Her fist connected solidly, and she felt the impact travel up her arm like hitting a steel plate. Kethmore didn't even flinch. The alien looked down at her with what might have been amusement. Interesting technique, but ineffective. Our biology is somewhat different from yours. The Centauri champion's counterattack came faster than Sarah could follow. A backhand blow caught her across the chest and sent her flying backward. She hit the arena wall hard enough to drive the breath from her lungs and slid to the floor, gasping. The human shows courage, Kethmore announced to the watching crowds. But courage alone is insufficient. Observe how easily superior strength defeats inferior tactics. Sarah struggled to her feet, tasting blood where she had bitten her tongue. The alien was toying with her, demonstrating its dominance for the benefit of the Centauri audience. She needed to change the dynamic quickly, or this would be over in minutes. She circled to her left, looking for an opening while trying to understand how her opponent moved. Kethmore's armor plates shifted and flexed as the alien turned to track her movement. The plates weren't just protection, they were part of the creature's muscular system. Your species relies too heavily on tools and weapons, Kethmore continued, apparently content to lecture while hunting her around the arena. Strip away your technology, and you are revealed as weak, fragile beings unsuited for true combat. Sarah feinted toward the alien's left side, then dove right as Kethmore moved to intercept. She managed to get behind the champion and aimed a kick at the back of what she hoped was a knee joint. Her boot connected with something that felt like iron, and pain shot up her leg. Kethmore spun with impossible speed and caught Sarah's follow-up punch in one massive hand. The alien's grip tightened, and Sarah felt the bones in her fist grinding together. You fight like a cornered animal, the champion observed. Desperate, unpredictable, but ultimately futile. Sarah used her free hand to strike at the alien's wrist, hoping to break its grip. Instead, Kethmore simply lifted her off the ground and threw her across the arena again. This time she managed to roll with the impact, coming up in a defensive crouch. The watching Centauri were making harmonious sounds that might have been applause or mockery. Sarah couldn't tell the difference, and it didn't matter. She was losing badly, and both species knew it. But as she watched Kethmore advance with casual confidence, Sarah began to notice something. The alien's movements were perfect, textbook examples of superior combat technique. Every strike was precisely aimed, every defense flawlessly executed. It was almost like fighting a living manual of martial arts, too perfect, too predictable. Sarah had spent 8 years running from her past, but she had also spent those years studying. She had read every tactical manual she could find, analyzed every battle in human history, and absorbed lessons from defeats as well as victories. One lesson stood out now: perfection was brittle. She let Kethmore approach, then did something no trained fighter would ever do. Instead of defending or attacking, she simply fell backward, rolling between the alien's legs and coming up behind it again. The move was clumsy, undignified, and completely unexpected. For the first time, Kethmore seemed confused. The alien had prepared for every conventional attack, every standard defense, but not for something so fundamentally wrong that it worked by accident. Sarah pressed her advantage by continuing to fight incorrectly. She threw wild haymaker punches that should have been easily blocked, then followed them with headbutts and knee strikes that violated every rule of proper combat. None of her attacks did significant damage, but they were forcing Kethmore to adapt to her chaotic style. What manner of technique is this? The champion demanded, deflecting a particularly awkward combination of strikes. It's called desperation, Sarah replied, ducking under a retaliatory blow. We humans are very good at it. She was getting battered in the exchange, accumulating bruises and cuts with every exchange. But she was learning. The alien's armor was strongest at the obvious points but had gaps at the joints. More importantly, Kethmore's perfect technique was beginning to work against it. as the champion tried to adapt to Sarah's unconventional attacks. The breakthrough came when Sarah deliberately telegraphed a right cross, then collapsed into a sprawling tackle that caught Kethmore around the legs. The alien toppled backward, more from surprise than force, and Sarah found herself on top of her opponent for the first time. She didn't try to strike at the armored torso. Instead, she grabbed the sides of Kethmore's head and began pounding the alien's skull against the arena floor. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't honorable, but it was effective. Kethmore roared in what might have been pain or fury, and threw Sarah off with explosive strength. But as the human rolled away, she saw something that gave her hope. One of the armor plates on the alien's neck had cracked. "You fight without honor," Kethmore snarled, touching the damaged plate. "Like a scavenger beast." "I fight to win," Sarah replied, circling again. "Honor is a luxury I can't afford." The alien's next attack was faster and more vicious than before. Sarah barely managed to avoid a strike that would have taken her head off, and the follow-up caught her in the ribs with enough force to crack bone. She went down hard, rolling across the arena floor while trying to catch her breath. But as she struggled to stand, Sarah realized something important. Kethmore was angry now. The perfect, controlled technique was giving way to emotion, and emotion led to mistakes. She just had to survive long enough to exploit one of them. Sarah's ribs screamed in protest with every breath, and blood from a cut above her eye was making it hard to see. She had been fighting for what felt like hours, though it had probably only been minutes. Kethmore stalked her around the arena like a cat playing with wounded prey, no longer hurrying to end the combat. "You persist in delaying the inevitable," the Centauri champion taunted. "Your species will watch their champion beaten to death slowly, just as you made us watch our worlds burn." Sarah wiped blood from her eyes and tried to focus. The alien was right about one thing. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Her unorthodox fighting style had surprised Kethmore initially, but the champion was adapting quickly. Each exchange left her more battered while the alien seemed barely winded, but she had learned something crucial during their fight. The Centauri warrior's armor wasn't just protection. It was part of their circulatory system. She had seen fluids flowing through channels in the plates, carrying what might be blood or some other vital substance. If she could disrupt that flow, Sarah feinted left, then dove right as Kethmore moved to intercept. Instead of trying to strike the alien directly, she grabbed one of the loose arena floor panels and swung it like a club at the champion's damaged neckplate. The makeshift weapon shattered against the alien's armor, but not before driving the cracked plate deeper into the underlying tissue. Kethmore stumbled, one hand going to the wound, and Sarah saw dark fluid leaking between the champion's fingers. "First blood to the human," she gasped, backing away from Kethmore's furious retaliation. The alien's next attack nearly ended the fight. A crushing blow to Sarah's shoulder sent her spinning across the arena floor, her left arm hanging useless at her side. She could feel something grinding in the joint, and her fingers wouldn't respond to commands. "Enough games," Kethmore snarled, advancing with deadly purpose. "You have shown that humans can die with courage. That will have to suffice for honor." Sarah scrambled backward on her hands and knees, trying to put distance between herself and the enraged champion. Her injured arm was slowing her down, and she could see Kethmore closing the gap with each stride. Then she saw it, a slight unevenness in the alien's gait. The damaged neckplate was affecting more than just circulation. It was interfering with Kethmore's balance and coordination. The champion was compensating well, but the flaw was there. Sarah stopped running and turned to face her opponent. "Tell me something, Kethmore. How many of my people did you kill during the war?" The question seemed to catch the alien off guard. "What relevance does this have?" "Humor a dying woman. How many humans died by your hand personally?" Kethmore paused just out of striking range. "I was responsible for the destruction of 7 of your ships during the defense of our outer colonies. Perhaps 3,000 of your warriors died because of my actions." 3,000. Sarah nodded slowly. "I killed 6 billion of your people. Not in personal combat, but through the orders I gave. Do you think that gives me some kind of advantage here? You speak nonsense. The dead cannot aid you in combat, can't they?" Sarah stood straighter despite her injuries. "Every person I killed is watching this fight through my eyes. Every Centauri who died because of my decisions wants to see justice done. The weight of all that death, all that guilt, all that responsibility. It should have crushed me years ago. She began walking toward Kethmore, ignoring the alien's defensive stance. But instead it made me into something else, something that doesn't care about pain or fear or even dying, because I've been dead inside for 8 years and dead things are very hard to kill. Kethmore attacked, but Sarah had read the telegraph in the alien's posture. She dropped low and drove her good shoulder into the champion's injured leg, using her smaller size and lower center of gravity to disrupt the alien's balance. They went down together, in a tangle of limbs. Sarah ignored the agony in her injured arm and focused on the one advantage she had: desperation. She wrapped her legs around Kethmore's torso and used her good arm to hammer at the cracked neckplate. The alien tried to throw her off, but the damage to the champion's circulation was becoming more severe. Kethmore's movements were growing sluggish and the dark fluid was flowing more freely from the neck wound. "You cannot win," the champion gasped, trying to pry Sarah's arm away from the damaged armor. "Even if you defeat me, my people will still destroy your world." "Maybe," Sarah agreed, continuing to strike at the weakened plate. "But at least they'll know that humans don't surrender, that we fight to the end no matter what the odds." The armor plate finally gave way completely, and Sarah drove her fist into the exposed tissue beneath. Kethmore convulsed and went limp, the alien's breathing becoming shallow and irregular. Sarah rolled away from her defeated opponent and struggled to her feet. The arena had gone completely silent, hundreds of Centauri staring in shock at their fallen champion. She looked up at the viewing platforms and saw Zeth-Kara watching with an expression she couldn't read. "It's done," Sarah called out, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "I've won your combat. Honor your agreement and leave Earth in peace." Zeth-Kara's response came after a long pause. "The combat is concluded and you have achieved victory through unconventional means. The terms of our agreement will be honored." Sarah felt her legs give out and she collapsed next to the still form of her opponent. Kethmore was breathing but unconscious, the alien's life signs weak but stable. She had won, but she took no satisfaction in the victory. The Centauri champion had been a worthy opponent who deserved better than defeat at the hands of someone who fought dirty out of desperation. Medical teams from both species entered the arena, the Centauri tending to their champion while humans worked on Sarah's injuries. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, she caught Zeth-Kara's eye. "The combat is over," she said weakly. "But this doesn't end the cycle of violence between our species. There has to be a better way forward." "Perhaps," the High Arbiter replied. "You have shown us something unexpected today. Sarah Chen, humans may be brutal and ruthless, but you are also resilient, adaptive. These qualities might serve you well in what comes next." "What comes next?" Zeth-Kara's expression was unreadable, but there was something in those black eyes that might have been respect. "Your species has earned the right to survive, but survival and peace are different things. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers you have not yet imagined. The Centauri will honor our agreement and withdraw, but others will come." As the medical team carried Sarah toward the shuttle bay, she processed the High Arbiter's words. The immediate threat was over, but Zeth-Kara was warning her about something larger. Humanity had passed one test, but there would be others. "Commander," Captain Torres's voice came through her communicator. "The alien fleet is withdrawing from Earth orbit. Whatever you did in there, it worked." Sarah closed her eyes and felt some of the tension leave her battered body. She had saved her species, but at what cost? The galaxy apparently held new threats, new challenges that would test humanity's resolve and adaptability. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, she had kept her word to the billions of people on Earth. She had faced the consequences of her past decisions and somehow found a way to redemption. It would have to be enough. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Earth, as the historians were already calling it. Sarah stood on the observation deck of Luna Command, watching the construction crews work on humanity's newest project. The shipyards that had once built vessels of war were now creating something unprecedented. A fleet designed not for conquest or defense, but for exploration and first contact. Her arm had healed well, though she still felt occasional twinges when the weather changed. The doctors said she was lucky to have retained full use of it after the damage Kethmore had inflicted. Sarah thought luck had very little to do with her survival that day. Stubbornness and spite had carried her through the fight, along with a refusal to let humanity die on her watch. The first ship should be ready for launch within the year, Admiral Harrison said, joining her at the observation window. The new diplomatic protocols are almost complete. and we've trained first contact teams for over a dozen different scenarios. Sarah nodded, but didn't take her eyes off the construction work. Zethkar was right about one thing. The galaxy is full of dangers we don't understand, but it's also full of opportunities we've never imagined. The Centauri have been surprisingly helpful with the technical specifications, Harrison continued. Their biotechnology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas. The joint research projects are yielding remarkable results. That had been the most unexpected development of all, instead of disappearing into the depths of space after their defeat. The Centauri had requested permission to establish a small embassy on Luna. Zethkara claimed it was to monitor humanity's progress and ensure they posed no future threat, but Sarah suspected there were other reasons. Any word from the deep space monitoring stations? She asked. 3 new signals this week, all from different sectors. The galaxy seems to be taking notice of what happened here. We're receiving what appear to be diplomatic overtures from at least 6 different species. Sarah finally turned away from the window. And the others? Harrison's expression grew somber. 4 signals that our xenolinguists classify as threatening. 3 more that we can't decode at all, which might be the most worrying of all. It was exactly what Sarah had expected. The confrontation with the Centauri had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Some species would see them as potential allies or trading partners. Others would view them as a threat to be eliminated before they could grow stronger. I've been thinking about what you said before the combat, Harrison continued. About giving them what they really wanted. You didn't just fight for Earth that day. You fought to change how the galaxy sees us. Sarah walked toward the conference room where the morning briefing was scheduled to begin. The Centauri expected us to be cowards who would surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, they found a species willing to fight hopeless battles and adapt to impossible circumstances. Word of that is spreading faster than our radio signals. The briefing room was packed with representatives from every branch of human government and military. The conversation died as Sarah entered, all eyes following the woman who had become the most famous human in history. She had tried to retire again after the battle, but the Defense Council had other plans. Humanity needed someone to lead them into their uncertain future, and Sarah Chen was the only person alive with experience in both warfare and first contact scenarios. Status report, she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. The Proxima colony has reported contact with an unknown vessel, reported the intelligence chief. The ship appeared at the edge of their system yesterday, and has been maintaining a fixed position since then. No hostile actions, but they're not responding to communication attempts. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the colony's position. Proxima Centauri was humanity's furthest outpost, home to nearly 1 million colonists. If hostile aliens were scouting their defenses, it could be the beginning of another crisis. What does the Centauri embassy think? High Arbiter Zethkara reviewed the sensor data and says the ship design is unfamiliar. However, the energy signatures suggest advanced biotechnology similar to their own, possibly another survivor species from the old Centauri Empire. That was interesting. Sarah had learned that the Centauri had once ruled a vast interstellar civilization, before internal conflicts and external pressures had reduced them to the few thousand survivors humanity had nearly exterminated. If other Centauri client species had survived, they might be looking for their former masters. Recommend we send the diplomatic cruiser Endeavour to make contact, Sarah decided. Full first contact protocols, but keep the battle fleet on standby. If these are more survivors looking for revenge, we need to be ready. Ma'am, interrupted the communications officer. We're receiving an incoming transmission from the unknown vessel. It's addressed specifically to you, Sarah raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The main display activated, showing an alien that was clearly related to the Centauri but distinctly different. This being had golden skin instead of blue, and its eyes were silver rather than black. When it spoke, the harmonic quality was gentler, almost musical. Sarah Chen of Earth. I am Speaker Velandra of the Keepers of Memory. We have come seeking the one called Zethkara, last of the High Arbiters. Our long search has brought us to this system, following rumors of Centauri survivors. Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. Zethkara is here, Speaker Velandra. What is your relationship to the Centauri? We were their chroniclers and knowledge keepers, tasked with preserving their history and culture. When the Great Dying began, we fled to the far reaches of the galaxy and have spent decades searching for other survivors. We had given up hope until we detected the energy signatures of their biotechnology. The Great Dying? Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Velandra's expression grew sad. The systematic extermination of Centauri worlds by an unknown species. We know only that the attackers were ruthless and thorough, leaving no survivors and no trace of their identity. We assumed all of our people were dead until we detected familiar energy patterns here. Sarah exchanged glances with Harrison. The Keepers didn't know that humanity was responsible for the Centauri genocide. They were looking for survivors of what they thought was an attack by some other alien species. I'll arrange for you to meet with Zethkara, Sarah said carefully. But first you should know that the situation here is complicated. In what way complicated? Sarah took a deep breath. This was going to be one of the most difficult conversations of her life. The species that destroyed the Centauri worlds, it was us, humanity. We fought a war with them 8 years ago, and I was the one who ordered the final assault on their homeworld. Velandra's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The golden alien recoiled as if struck, its silver eyes widening in shock and horror. You are the destroyers? The killers of worlds? Yes, and 6 months ago the surviving Centauri came here seeking justice. I fought their champion in single combat and won, earning humanity the right to survive. Zethkara and the other survivors have since established diplomatic relations with us. The speaker was silent for a long time, processing this revelation. When Velandra finally spoke, the musical quality of the alien's voice had taken on a harder edge. This is unprecedented. The destroyers and the survivors living in peace? How is such a thing possible? Because we learned from our mistakes, Sarah replied honestly. The war with the Centauri taught us that the galaxy is full of species we don't understand, and that first contact requires wisdom, not weapons. We're trying to build a different kind of future. Velandra considered this for several moments. I must speak with Zethkara immediately. If what you say is true, then everything we thought we knew about the galaxy has changed. Sarah nodded. I'll escort you to Luna personally. But Speaker Velandra, I want you to understand something. The human species you'll be dealing with isn't the same one that destroyed your people's worlds. We've had to evolve quickly to survive in a galaxy that judges us by our worst actions. Evolution, Velandra mused. Perhaps that is the key to understanding. Very well, Sarah Chen. I will come to your Luna and speak with the High Arbiter, but know that others of my people are watching from afar, and their judgment of humanity will depend greatly on what I learn here. The transmission ended, leaving the briefing room in tense silence. Sarah looked around at the faces of humanity's leaders and saw the same mixture of hope and fear she felt herself. Another test, Harrison said quietly. Another opportunity, Sarah corrected. The Keepers of Memory could be valuable allies, or they could become our greatest enemies. Either way, we'll face whatever comes with our eyes open and our principles intact. As the meeting broke up, Sarah remained in her chair, staring at the tactical display that showed humanity's tiny sphere of influence in a galaxy full of unknown civilizations. 8 years ago, she had been running from her past, hiding from the consequences of her decisions. Now she was helping to lead her species into an uncertain but promising future.